3-1.1.03. What does all of this mean? As stated above, devices are known to exist that can monitor your movements in your house. They can observe your heart rate and your body temperature. Once you're in a verified location where it is determined you will remain for an extended period of time, a bed or chair, a microwave beam can be used to mimic a fever in a specific organ of your body, like your liver. You would not feel this beam nor its effects. This will cause your body to react to this fever as if an actual infection has set in. Your body's immune system would respond by retaining salt and water for the fight against this perceived infection. As soon as you move out of the beam strike zone, or as soon as the beam is turned off, the organ would return to normal temperature with no long-term damage to that organ. However, repeated exposures, perhaps only 3 to 5 sessions, would cause a person's immune system to retain water and salt on a large scale, causing swelling and sudden weight gain, water balance, in the torso of the victim. Once this process is started, it causes runaway swelling of the fat tissue in the torso, including the tissue surrounding the heart. This would result in congestive heart failure, which is exactly what the cardiologist described to me when I asked him about water balance and a localized fever in the liver. In other words, congestive heart failure could be inflicted upon an otherwise healthy victim, the result of repeated exposure to a focused microwave beam used to mimic a fever infection in any of several internal organs. The heart, though initially undamaged, would be squeezed by the fluid buildup in the chest cavity and would not be able to perform properly, causing the well-known runaway effect of water-salt retention. The early symptoms would mimic chest congestion or possibly an asthma attack, and the unaware victim would likely think they had a chest cold or pneumonia until the time that the heart could no longer function correctly. Then, if untreated, the heart would fail, causing death. Treatment to reverse the effects of this microwave beam prior to death would be as simple as administering diuretics to facilitate fluid removal through urination. The time frame involved from initial exposure to the weapon to death would be dictated by the health and body weight of the victim. That may be a matter of hours or days, up to several months. Using the methods outlined here, a healthy person could be remotely murdered by elements of a government without ever exposing the government agent or agents to the dangers or complications of actual contact with the victim. The death would appear to be of natural causes and would be completely untraceable, as no chemical or physical residue would remain on or in the body of the victim. The murder could be accomplished from an adjacent apartment, hotel room, rented house, or mobile van. This brings up the question, who could be a victim of such an operation? It's important to remember, in considering this question, what we have already established as to the nature of the government agents who would be in possession of such a weapon. We know from the documented behavior of CIA agents in using psychoactive drugs that randomly chosen people were targeted, along with at least one case in Paris, France, where a CIA agent targeted an art student due to an argument in a sidewalk cafe. More on this below. This, coupled with the knowledge that, given spiffy new toys, the authoritarian has a tendency to look for opportunities to use said toys, and you have the potential of government agents killing almost anyone for almost any reason, or perhaps no reason other than the fact that they can do it and get away with it. As difficult as this concept is for a sane, peaceful person to accept, the fact is that we are not talking about the behavior of sane, peaceful people. 3-1.1.04. Stanley Glickman. Stanley Glickman was a promising young painter studying art in Paris. He was not politically involved in any way and was not an activist of any kind. He was an artist in love, planning a future. Glickman encountered some well-dressed Americans in a cafe in Paris. After a discussion that resulted in a disagreement, Glickman agreed to a round of drinks as a peace offering. The man who purchased the round of drinks and served Glickman's drink to him turned out to be the notorious MK Ultra operative Sidney Gottlieb. Likely due to drugs placed in his drink, Glickman suffered intense hallucinations that resulted in his being admitted to the psychiatric ward of a hospital, where he was further subjected to more hallucinogens and electroshock treatments by CIA operatives. Stanley Glickman never recovered from the experiments and was dependent on his family to take care of him until his eventual death. Stanley Glickman's crime? Sidney Gottlieb wanted a guinea pig, and Stanley Glickman was in the wrong cafe at the wrong time. Why am I talking about a victim of MK Ultra and the CIA's experiments when the topic was a heart attack gun? Because Stanley Glickman was tortured and murdered to satisfy the curiosity and ego of an operative of the state, and others assisted in this dreadful crime simply because they were told to do so. Stanley Glickman was tortured because people were obedient and did their jobs. This is the nature of the people who now possess weapons that can both see through walls and kill you without leaving any trace of how it was accomplished. Stanley Glickman engaged in a conversation, and his opinion ran contrary to that of a CIA agent. The CIA agent possessed a weapon and used it on Stanley Glickman for the exact same reason a SWAT team used an MRAP to serve a court summons for a parking violation. Because children will play new games when given new toys, and demented children play demented games. Given the small set of examples listed here, and understanding that I could continue listing examples for thousands of pages, one must come to the conclusion that we are not struggling against people who are simply confused about freedom and rights. We are fighting evil in its pure form. We cannot play nice. We cannot expect to reason with these demented servants of the state any more than we can reason with those to whom governments of the world owe some $57 trillion. CIA World Factbook. Our logic will not reach them. Our pleas mean nothing to them. Joining them and trying to use them to do our bidding will only make us like them. It is only once you view the reality of police and government servants as being an occupation army serving their political masters that their savagery begins to make sense. Once you begin to view the political establishment as nothing but puppets serving international money masters, the whole beast begins to make sense. The hard fact is that we have but one and only one choice: bring this beast and its enforcers down before they turn this planet into a radioactive ash heap. Humanity is at war, but sadly few humans realize the battlefield, the armies, or the stakes. 3-1.2 The True Nature of Evil. The most dangerous enemy is the one who can convince you he doesn't exist. To this end, key members of the intelligentsia have gone to great lengths to convince educated people that there is no such thing as evil. It's an interesting philosophical exercise that can allow a thinking person to contemplate deep concepts from a morally neutral point of view and can lead to some enlightening thoughts. But it all falls apart when you find out that while you were sipping your boutique coffee, chatting with your brilliant and beautiful friends at the university, your wife was stopped on the street for a minor traffic violation, but then the cop beat her to death when she resisted, and the cop feared for his life. All the while, your children were sitting in your automobile watching their mother die. In other words, the intelligentsia has deceived you and your philosophy stinks. The world contains evil humans who do evil deeds, and the vast majority of evil deeds are those done under the guise of authority. Second, only to convincing you that your enemy doesn't exist is convincing you that your enemy looks vastly different than he actually looks. This is a simple task and is much easier to sell to a wider audience than just the self-appointed intellectual elite in their university halls. The mainstream clergy make an incredibly comfortable living demonizing a wide array of normal human activities while relying on guilt and ignorance to fill their congregations with the fear of eternal punishment for things that simply can't be called evil by any honest thinking person. So if we believe the state-approved clergy, a drink of whiskey, some mutual fun with your date, using a forbidden word in a sentence, wearing the wrong clothing, listening to the wrong music, keeping the details of your life private and out of the priest's ears, or simply earning money and keeping it for yourself are all called evil, and you're told they will push you down the highway to hell. Now let's all join that same impressive clergyman as he leads us in a solemn prayer for God to bless the brave troops as they rape, pillage, and burn and the innocent in faraway lands. And let's not forget to pray that God guides and protects our great leader and fills him with wisdom as he decides which poor village he will incinerate this week. Perhaps that clergyman misunderstood the scripture that states, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Before someone claims that I'm Christian bashing for calling out the corruption of clergy, let me point out some others who are guilty of using this same method of bait and switch in the definition of evil. Almost every television cop show and almost every Hollywood movie drama portrays a cartoon version of evil that is either grossly wrong or intentionally deceptive. We see time and time again lies spoon-fed to the masses that portray cartoon evil villains, threatening the innocent, held at bay only by the brave men and women of law enforcement. And evil villains in dark, dirty, foreign countries threatening a peaceful world, while the only thing that keeps them from enslaving humanity are the good super spies with amazing abilities fighting for freedom, justice, and the American way, or the brave American super snipers who never kill the innocent. This storyline is simply a rehashing of the great man/boogeyman myth, dressed up in a fancy wrapper and sold to yet another generation. If Joseph Goebbels could see modern media, he would be both proud and pleased. To understand evil, you have to dissect authoritarians into three codependent, equally guilty groups. First, the powerful, then the power enthralled, and finally the obedient. First, let's look at the powerful. They are the easy ones to pick on. They are the top-tier leaders, the elite central bankers, the upper crust of the corporate world, the highest-ranking intelligence officers, the highest-ranking military officers, and finally the least powerful of the top tier, the political heads of state. These are the untouchables. With a few exceptions, these are positions that are handed down to the select, not earned by the deserving. These truly powerful people will do anything to anyone, including each other, to remain in power. They form and break alliances, and as they do, people in the lower ranks die, sometimes in quite large numbers. The one starkly striking thing about these elites is that they, for the most part, apparently believe the entire great man myth and view themselves as a kind of super race destined to guide humanity, like something out of Mein Kampf or some 1920s eugenics handbook. Most of them believe in the hereditary right of ascension, and they practice it. The fact may be hard to believe, especially for Americans who have little to no respect for kings and royal families. But no matter what you or I may think, the important thing is that they believe and practice hereditary right of ascension with violent vigor and enthusiasm, and in doing so they justify any and all actions that they must take to maintain their power. They believe it is their responsibility, their destiny, and their divinely appointed burden to be in power, and they will incinerate millions without hesitation to fulfill that divine appointment. Individually, they are not Hollywood movie monsters. They are kind to their pets and they love their mothers. They enjoy art and music and don't ever want to see another ugly war. They give incredible amounts of their wealth to charities, and yet, so long as they breathe, they will maintain their power structure if it means burning their own houses to the ground. This is Acton's axiom. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, displayed in its fullness. Next, let us consider the power enthralled, and the other side of Acton's axiom, Buppert's corollary. Power attracts the corruptible. Those who want to dominate and are drawn to power are almost always enthralled with those who have power. These are typically the fiercely loyal fanatics, not to a cause, nation, or team, but their loyalty is to powerful individuals, and ultimately their loyalty is to their quest for their own power. On the outer surface, these people tend to appear more obviously evil, as their names are often associated with the kinds of crimes of the state that make the headlines and lead the news cycles. But like almost all criminals, they rarely consider themselves or their actions as evil. They have layers of mental hoops they jump through to justify their actions. They use collectivist excuses to justify killing the innocent or destroying economies, and they almost always believe that what they are doing is for the greater good. And as a final level of faith in the state, they believe the double-edged excuse. If the overall action really is bad, their boss is to blame, but if the execution of the action is the part that is bad, their underlings should have refused the orders. By riding in the magic middle, they justify their evil by blaming the decision on those above them while blaming the action on those below them. These disgusting humans are incredibly dangerous. Finally, we come to the obedient, the patriotic, the ones bursting with national or cultural pride or painted over in civic duty and esprit de corps. Although all categories of humans tend to have overlapping groups, and it's almost never accurate to draw hard lines between people, you should strive to differentiate between the obedient, as described here, and the neutrals, described later in this manual. Neutrals typically are not successful in dirty jobs like killing, caging, destroying, extorting, and intimidating because their own set of morals cause them to object to such behavior. In cases where neutrals are forced to commit atrocities due to circumstances, they usually suffer mentally and emotionally, as they lack the coping mechanisms that the more obedient utilize. And that may be the easiest way to judge between neutrals and the obedient, as the more obedient seem to be well suited taking orders and committing atrocities. Some even relish in the deed, but even then they find ways of excusing their actions. However, once again, these are not cartoon monsters. They have families, they walk their dog, they get stuck in traffic, they have more debt than they want, they are very often church supporters, they may think cat videos are cute, but given the order, they will kick in your door, kill your dog, and place a gun to your grandmother's head. Then, when they have justified what they have done in their duty report, they will congratulate themselves for being a hero and go home to their children. These very human, seemingly normal, everyday people are our enemies. The powerful will incinerate cities to maintain their power. Those enthralled with the powerful will justify that decision and pass the order to the obedient, who will not only obey, but they will gleefully commit mass murder and brag about it in their old age. The most immediately dangerous individuals of the three groups are the obedient, but you can't win by fighting them because there is an endless supply of the obedient. You have to fight smart and not based on the emotions of the moment. Remember, Henry Kissinger referred to the obedient as dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns. Hydarnes referred to the obedient as the immortals because as soon as one died, there was another fool waiting to step in and take his place. So again, as much as it seems that the obedient should be our targets, and as much justified hate will be rightly aimed at the obedient in the coming years, we have to look beyond wasting resources and time attempting to engage the obedient directly and find ways to touch the power enthralled and eventually the untouchables. By doing so, we break the chain of command, freeing the obedient so that they may choose to stop obeying.